Good evening. Welcome to one of my favourite seaside locations. Love doing seascapes here. This is Southwold on the beautiful Suffolk coast. Those of you who've seen my vlogs will have seen I've visited here before a few times, and tonight I'm going to talk to you about something that I think sets pros apart from amateurs, and that is the ability and the time to react to weather conditions. Let me explain. But before we start, let me just make it clear that I wouldn't regard myself as a pro. My definition of a pro is somebody who earns all their money from photography. Now, I earn money from photography, but I don't earn all of my income from it. However, I do believe that I've got a professional approach to photography, and some of the benefits of my lifestyle is that I can react straight away to conditions. So which brings me rather neatly onto tonight, because tonight I hadn't planned on coming out at all to take pictures. I was going to have a night upstairs editing some photos, but what's drawn me out tonight is the fact that the weather app on my phone went off to say that there was a chance of thunderstorms, there was some weather coming in, and you thought, you know what, everything is charged up, and that's something I want to talk about, so I'm going to go out. So literally in about half an hour of the weather alert going off, I'm at the beach. Now the drive has been an hour and a quarter, and in that time the weather's kind of improved a little bit. I'll talk to you a little bit about the shot I'm going to shoot in a second, but being able to react needs two things. It needs time, which I'm lucky enough to have as I haven't got a day job, so I can react really quickly. And the other thing that you need is you need your equipment ready. And one of the things that I do as part of my routines when I get back from a shoot, I will do two things. I will, first of all, I will download all the footage onto my external drive, so I've got it. I don't format the cards at that point. I always make sure that I've processed, I've got the pictures in another place before I do that. And the second thing that I do is I put all the gear back on charge. So my gear has always got a full charge in it, or enough to be able to do a shoot. So drone batteries on charge, camera battery on charge, although I have got spares, and the camera that you're on charge. It allows you to do what I've done tonight, react to conditions. So speaking of conditions, let's have a look at the shot. So usually I shoot this pier from the other side, and sunrise is normally directly behind me over there. Sunset, obviously, it's complete opposite direction, pretty much, so it's behind me there. But tonight I'm not really interested in the sunset as such. I'm interested in that. This lovely dark cloud, which I'll be able to burn in with a linear gradient, really darken down and make it really dark and moody. And the other benefit of this kind of light is that the buildings on the pier really do sing. Because they're white, they really stand out. So raising the highlights, lowering the shadows makes this really pop. This could end up being a black and white image, don't know. I quite like the dark blues, but if it looks a bit too uniform, I might go a little bit black and white with it. But let's set the camera up. I'm going to try and get these groins in as well. The problem I've got is there's too many lines that are parallel, so the pier and the groins are a bit too parallel, so I need to separate those somehow by getting closer, maybe with a wide angle. So we'll have a little look at this. I'll set the shot up and then I'll show you. Right, let me take you into my camera and I'll show you what I'm looking at. So that's the shot, pretty straightforward as you can see. I've got this unfortunate sign on the end of this groin here, which I may well Photoshop out. But you see this lovely dark sky here. This bit is especially dark, which I really like, really moody. This will all darken down, and we've got this lovely light streak, as it happens, just above the top of these buildings here, which look great. Reflections in the water here. This is going to darken down a little bit, maybe also with a grad, and that's going to look good. So the only thing I need to decide now really is what I'm going to do with the shutter speed. Do I want the water to be blurred, or do I want it with a little bit of movement in it? I might do both. So I'm going to shoot this at a couple of different shutter speeds, and then what I'm going to do is get a little bit closer to here to get a little bit more drama in the foreground, which will add to the mood of the picture. Okay, first picture done. That was on 1/6 of a second at f13. We're now on 1 second with a 3-second delay. And what that will do, we'll just check it, that will blur the water, but as it's so far away, not sure it really matters. Right, let's move a bit closer and then we'll shoot it again. Okay, so this is the, let's tilt this down so you can see it better. This is a 2.5 second exposure at f13. Now if you notice, the meter is saying that I am overexposing this, but if you look at the histogram, there's so much space here because of this dark sky. I'm very happy that that's going to be fine. So 2.5 seconds, what I'm going to do is change the delay, because at the moment the delay is 3 seconds, and I'm going to change it to ½ second, so at least it's going to reduce any camera shake that I've got, but it's going to allow me to judge the waves as they come in and break a little bit easier. And what I'm waiting for is a bit of backwash, so I need a big wave to come in, and as it's going out we'll shoot the picture something like that. Oh, this one looks even better. Shoot that again, and then we're just looking at shapes here. So there's just a ½ second delay, which gives me a little bit more time to just press the button, get the camera out of the way. And all I'm going to look for with that are some shapes in these waves here. Don't like the fact there's 3 lines, can't do much about that at the moment. I'm just going to have to wait for the right wave. 2.5 second exposure. Look at that, lovely, beautiful curve. Right, super stuff. So let's just take some without the ND on, which will give us a little bit of a faster shutter speed, although the light is fading fast. But we're down to something like, I can push the histogram right back down to there, 1/4 second might be better. We're not getting any big splashy waves anyway particularly, but something like that might look better. We'll have a look. We'll just take a few and then we'll select them. Right, cool. Right, brilliant. Okay, I've taken quite a few of those. I'm also going to take a photograph with that. I love these markers. The red on those look amazing, especially against the dark, moody sky. So we'll take some pictures of that, long exposure stuff with that. So what I'm going to do now is go back to my office and take you into Lightroom, and I'll just show you how I'm going to process these, because I'm trying to include that in my vlogs more often. Back to me then in my office. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom, and this is the image that I've chosen out of that session. I really like the shape of this backwash here, nice kind of circle. We're going to actually crop it to here, just so that this works as a leading line into the scene. And you can see that the light's still quite nice. There's some light on the side of these buildings, which I'm going to enhance in a moment, especially here, and a nice dark sky. And the first thing we're going to do with this is we are going to adjust the exposure. Now, if you look at the histogram up here, we can see that this is f13 at 2.5 seconds. In fact, the details are here. if you're interested. But if we look at the histogram, you'll see that there's loads of space to the right hand side where the highlights lie. And if you remember when I showed you in camera, the camera was saying this was overexposed, but you can see quite clearly that it is not. And the first thing that I can do is move the exposure up so the histogram looks a bit more balanced. Now I'm going to darken the sky down. The blues on this, because it was taking kind of a blue hour, you can see that the blues are kind of getting quite high, but that's fine. So we're going to push the exposure up to about there, a stop. And the reason I shot it back down here was because that would adjust the exposure. So if I'd have shot it here, we'd be looking at a second, or actually less than that, maybe 3/4 of a second or a half a second would have been the correct exposure. And obviously I needed the longer shutter speed to blur the water, so I was making the most of the histogram. I know that even with it here, the shadow details on this Z8 sensor is going to be fine. So let's get it back to where we had it, roughly about there, 1.5 stops, let's say that. And what I'm then going to do is I'm just going to push the highlights a little bit and maybe just drop the shadows a little bit. Now the next thing that I'm going to do in this is just denoise it, and actually if we look really closely, there's not an awful lot of noise there, so I don't think I'm going to need to worry. It's 64 ISO, so the noise should be fine. Actually there's a little bit, maybe just a fraction, and as we've got it, let's do it anyway. So that's done in the details tab, and there we go. It has made a very slight difference, not a lot really, but we'll have it there, that's fine. And before I do anything else, the next thing I want to do is, if we have a look here at these posts on the pier and these groins here, you can see that these guys are leaning backwards, and that is the consequence of using an ultra wide angle lens. Some lenses are better than others. This 40-30 is normally pretty good, to be fair. What I'm going to do first of all is, if we come down to the transform tool here, and by clicking the vertical slider, you can see that. Let me just first of all show you that, so we can take the grid off, we take the grid back on. I find it nice to have it back on. So we're just going to move the vertical slider up to somewhere, something like that. And if you look on the left here now, we can see that that is fairly straight. Okay. What it does mean though, it does mean that the edge of the image has now been bent inwards, so these checkerboards will just show as completely clear, which obviously is not what we want. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop. I'm going to keep the crop the same. I'm going to move it into here, and I like this curve, but I don't like this space at the bottom, particularly on this. So what I'm going to do with this is just drop that, or raise that rather, to about there. I think I'm going to come inside that post, and that's looking something like it should. Just make sure I don't go on the edge, because otherwise you end up with a mark or a blank bit of canvas just there. Press return. That is now done. I'm now going to just tweak the rest of the image. So what we're going to do here, I'll just add a little bit of texture, maybe touch of clarity, or that does tend to make it a bit grungy. Texture's better, and a little bit of vibrance. I do think though I'm going to turn this to monochrome, so when I'm doing that, I'm happy to go a little bit further than I would if it was a color image. That's nice, because that actually, if we look here, we're bringing out some nice color on the side of this building on the pier there. Okay, cool. Now the next thing I want to do, I want to just lighten up these huts or these buildings on the pier. So for that, I'm going to use some masking. I could, let's just see what happens when we click on landscape, because the landscape button analyzes the picture, which is what you need. So we've got sky, but as you can see, if I click on that, you can see here that we've got some of the building. See this pink color? That's been selected. That would have to be got rid of, so but I don't need that anyway. Architecture looks pretty good. We're just going to click that. There's also the water, and there's also natural ground. And what you can do is you can add these two things together if you want to. But let's just have a quick look at this and see what we're up against. So there's definitely some part of the building there that's not shown. And actually, if we look really carefully, we can see that the mask is also been applied around the outside of this, and that's not what we want, because doing that means that if I were to lighten the highlights up, we're going to get a lovely halo around the building, which is definitely not what I want. So we're going to cancel that. Let's try, sometimes what works really well with this is the object selection tool. Anyway, make it smaller. I'm just going to select the buildings. So that one, that should bring that up. That's better. I'm going to add in another one, which is going to be this building here. So again, just drag the mask over it. It should select it. Yeah, it needs to add a little bit in there. That's fine. We're going to add another object in, because all of the selection I'm going to use is going to apply to all 4 of these buildings. So that kind of works. That should work there on that one very well. It does actually. And the final one is this one over here. So it almost needs its own mask, but I think it'll be all right like this. No, not so much. Let's just get rid of that one then. That's the last one. So we're just going to delete that one. I'll do that separately in a minute. Okay, first of all, let's just add a brush into this side of this one here. Okay, and what I'm going to do with all of these is I am going to raise the highlights so that it appears the light is zinging off the side, which it was because you were there. Okay, right. Let's just adjust this one then. So we're going to zoom in on this. Let's create maybe a brush. See if we can do that with a brush. Let's make it a bit bigger. And around there, just roughly. I'm not worried too much about the roof. It's the white bits on the side that we're interested in. Again, push the highlights. And that, look, can you see how that just raises that a little bit? Now, too much, it looks false. But I do want it to stand out. And I think that kind of works. Brilliant. Okay, that's cool. So next we're going to work on the sky. So I'm going to add a linear gradient to this. It's quite straightforward. And I'm going to drag it from the top right corner, which is where the dark weather is. Let me just do that, and I'm going to intersect. I'm going to subtract. In fact, I'm going to subtract with a brush. Let's just get rid of that bit out of the mask. I don't want that to be affected at all. Make this smaller. There's different ways to do this actually. You could do it with the object selection tool. I'm just going to drag this across here. Okay, so that is the linear gradient minus the building, and with this I'm going to darken that down. Drop the shadows. Sometimes the exposure makes it look really grungy, so you have to be a little bit careful, but that's just dropping that histogram down a little bit on those colours. Might end up adding another one to this. We'll see how we go. Yeah, that's okay. So let's now add another linear gradient. You can lay a linear gradient over a linear gradient. And these, in the old days, back in the day, we used to use grads on front of the camera for that, and I don't tend to do that anymore because Lightroom is so brilliant at it. So there we go. That's making it look very stormy. We've also got this light over here, which I'm not quite happy with, so I might have to adjust the crop. We'll see how we go. Because it's a monochrome, I'm going to make this darker. I really want this to be a very low key image. And the other thing that I need to do quickly with this is I need to adjust the shadow or the reflection in the sand here, because if we had a dark sky overhead, we would have a dark reflection in the sand. So let's just darken that down so it looks more realistic. Okay, let's have a look at how we go in there. Not too bad at all. Not happy with this left hand side. Let's just crop this in a little bit more. Let's try something like that. Brilliant. Good. Okay, so 2 things left to do. Actually, maybe 3. One of those things is going to be create a little starburst on here. Another thing is I'm going to get rid of this sign, maybe this pebble, and I'm going to do that in Photoshop. And then what I'm going to do is convert it to monochrome. So first of all, let's get rid of that and that. And to do that, we right click, edit in Photoshop, and Photoshop will now open that. Right, so here we are in Photoshop. So what we're going to do with this, we're going to remove this sign here with the remove tool, which is just up here if you need it. And I don't like that pebble either. I think it's distracting. Hit the tick and they've both gone. Let's have a look at that, see what sort of job it's done. Brilliant, that's fine. Okay, so that's the work done in Photoshop. So now we're going to go File, Save, and that is going to bring it back into Lightroom. And here it comes, and there we go. So that is our file with that sign removed. So 2 more things to do now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a quick play in Luminar. If you want to copy a Luminar with a discount, I'll put my discount code down below, but I'll get you 10% off Luminar Neo. So here we are in Luminar, and what we're going to do with this, we're just going to use the magic light tool, and all I'm going to do with this, the smallest brush possible, just going to add in a little bit of a starburst just in there, and a little bit of a starburst just in there. You probably won't even notice this, but it's just a little bit of sparkle, which I quite like. Maybe just on the end there as well. Okay, that works fine. By the way, I don't like these, but I'll have to have a look at those in a moment. But there we go. That's just all I'm going to do in Luminar, so let's close that. Brilliant stuff. And the final thing that I'm going to do, there is a problem here which I'm going to have to sort out. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that, but I'll have a little think. But what we'll do is, in fact, I may not be able to, so we'll have to have a look. But the final thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to convert this to black and white. So right click, edit in, and I use silver effects for this, which I really like using. And here we are in silver effects. So we have a selection of different presets here, which I quite like to use. And I'm just going to look along the side here and see if any of them really catch my eye. Quite like that one, looks quite nice. That's worked quite well. It does sometimes make this quite grungy, but if I look on the right hand side here, there's definitely film grain included, which I'll turn off. If you do that often, oh, actually it's not too bad. Sometimes taking the film type out makes it worse. That works fine, I quite like that. So high structure smooth works well. It also works, I think, quite nice as a low key image, maybe. These push process works quite well. A bit too harsh for me, that. And some of these grad ones look good, quite good. I can actually make this a little bit brighter. I quite like that. That's kind of the idea that I had in my head. And all of this really, this processing is all to do with what I've got in my head. It's the creative process that I was even anticipating, even when I was on the beach. Good, excellent. So there we go. I like that. Click apply. And there's the final image. I'm going to share this with you. I'm going to see if I can do something about those reflections. I'm not sure what I can do, but I'm going to have a little think. I might also lighten up this a little bit just to give it a little bit more detail. So I'll do that. But in the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed that. I'll put this on the screen for you to have a look at and go back to me at the beach. Well, there you go. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope that's been useful. Even though I wouldn't call myself a pro necessarily, I'm very lucky that my lifestyle allows me to be able to react really quickly. But even if you have a full-time job, you can cut the odds a little bit by making sure your gear is always ready, it's always charged, there's always SD cards and memory cards in the cameras ready to go. And you know, if you fancy it, just get out and do it. The weather forecast looks good. Go and chase the weather, because good photography, or good landscape photography, is about the weather quite often. Okay, thanks ever so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, think about doing so, and then click the notification bell, which will allow you to be told when the next video is uploaded, because I upload videos every Sunday at 6 o'clock GMT, and next Sunday I will see you again. Hopefully I'll be doing some macro photography with a new camera, which I'll talk to you about next week. In the meantime, thanks again for watching. Take care of yourselves. Give the ones you love a big hug. I'll see you next Sunday at 6. Ta-ra.